All right, K-Dog, let's do this.
How's it going?
Good. Caffeinated all to hell, so I should be jittery today, and, you know.
Do you get real jittery with caffeine?
When I overdo it. And today I
Yeah.
absolutely freaking overdid it.
Do you get anxiety with caffeine?
No.
I have noticed the older I get, it used to be like I could drink coffee and take a nap. And sometimes I could drink coffee and freak out. But I have noticed if I have like too much caffeine or more caffeine than food in me, I'll get like anxiety and dizzy spells now. Is that just what 40 is? Is that a new thing?
No, you know what? I will attribute it more of your paying attention to your health consciousness.
Yeah.
Because I think you've rebalanced the chemicals and how your neurons fire. And I think a lot of the terrible food we eat like deadens what your body's supposed to do. And when you let that birth again, I think all chemicals hit you differently. You know,
Could be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because now what I drink in the morning is, so for a while now I've been putting like collagen powder in, and then now I actually have creatine and collagen powder in my coffee in the morning. And normally I feel fine, but yeah, it's just I've noticed like if I don't eat right away, which I typically won't, it'll pretty much be my coffee as I'm getting ready, and then I probably will eat something later. Sometimes I'll get like dizzy or shaky, and I'm just like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely, like, we talk about the upsides of nutrition, but there are definitely, I'm not going to call them downsides, but they're differences that change a lot. So we were training for a marathon, and one of my business partners, we were talking about, like, if he were to just go and, just eat regular terrible food like everybody else, he'd be sick as a dog for days. But everybody else who eats that all the time don't feel the poisons at all. The body's almost have bigger barriers from keeping them from feeling bad. So, but it's weird that in a healthy state, you should be able to defend against unhealthy things more, and it's not. It's less.
And that's kind of why I always thought maybe it was more so attributed to age. Because it's like this with so many things.
And let's talk about that today. Because all right, so here's one of my favorite conversations.
Okay.
We're going to talk about dumb people because I love talking about dumb people.
I feel like we usually do.
I have an ongoing debate whether or not the capacity of human beings, the body that we carry around, if everybody is wired the same and have the same abilities, or if there are just deficient people and no matter what you do to them, they will never be able to do the things that you can do, think the way that you can, use their body the way that you do. And we like to cite the anomalous where people are born with some kind of deficiency. But I'm talking about if you have a regular body, a regular mind, whether or not if I took a person, put them into my Secret Joe lab, if I could make them healthy, smart, capable, and develop things that they didn't have before. And I argue that everything is possible. The whole thing.
Everything.
Because here's what happens is once I tell you something's not your fault, you believe me because that's the thing you wanted me to tell you anyway, right? So if I say, oh, you're just a victim of circumstance, you can't be healthy. You can't get smart.
It's your genes.
Then you're like, oh, okay, it must be innate. I'm just never going to be that. So, and here, ego's a big portion of this math too, because human beings do not like to be bad at stuff. Okay. So if I took you and I took you out here and I gave you a golf club and said, swing this thing for 30 minutes, you would look like a dork and everybody that saw you would make fun of you and judge you for it. Right.
Yep.
Means that because of, even if we didn't have to do that, just going through your mind and what would happen makes you less willing to swing the golf club.
I
because
instantly laugh because I'm like, that would be terrible.
Right. Now, but you would have to convince me that if you did that every day for a year, whether or not you could swing that golf club and be really good at it. But it's the ego that stops you from even putting in the effort. And everybody's like, well, I don't golf, or I'm a this or I'm a that.
Yeah.
And then they'll basically give you the foundation to deny that you could develop in that deal if you put enough energy into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not to toot my own horn, but I really see where over the last, I don't know, year and a half that my mindset has shifted from this. Because yeah, it used to be where if something was difficult, I would be like, yeah, that sucks. That's hard.
That's not me.
That's not me. Yeah, I can't do those things. And now I realize over the weekend, for example, and this is a small example, but, I work out with a virtual trainer, and there was this little like ab exercise in the app. And I said, let me try this. It was only 6 minutes. I could do 6 minutes. It was an eye opener of how weak my core is.
Yeah.
It hurt. It made me nauseated. I was sore and couldn't even do 6 full minutes because I'd say at least half of that time was me laying on the ground trying not to die.
Yeah.
And instantly, when it was over, I typically, probably old Kelin would have been like, that sucks. I'm not fit like her. I can't do this. My first thought and the first thing I said to my husband is, I got to do this every day. I try to do this every day this week until this doesn't suck. Because I used to not be able to pick up a certain amount of weight. Now I can pick up a certain amount of weight. And so all I have to do is keep doing this, and then it's going to stop sucking.
Yeah. But you can take pretty much anything. If you're a dumb person and you're like, why am I dumb? Exposure to new things, neurons aren't developed, don't practice being, like 1% smarter than I was yesterday, you never come smart. And then you'll just be like, oh, math problem. It got me. I can't do the math problem. I'm just not built that way. That's not me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's the argument that I'm waiting for ultimately, is someone to prove to me that not every human being can be fastest, strongest, that their frame, their mind can carry them. And nobody has yet convinced me to that deal. So, but this is going to matter in the future because... for some reason, science reveals itself in culture. It just does. And, homeostasis is a real thing where you have, sort of like competing ends, and it tries to reach a balance between those two ends, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you have a society built of really, really smart people on one spectrum and really, really dumb people on the other deal, if you try to go too far in either direction, society will try to pull you back into the normal. Now, as long as normal is okay and healthy and safe and whatever, no problem. But normal is not becoming safe and healthy. So if you're getting pulled in, like the smart thing to do would become smart, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wait, that's kind of a...
Smart thing
that's
would be to become smart.
Right. And if society's like, well, you're too smart now. Like, we don't get too
You're
far
making
away.
us look bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It'll pull you back down into this part. So we're not... This isn't a culture that has a trajectory where everybody's going to get smarter. This has a trajectory of the dumb became normal, and then the normal's trying to pull everybody really close to it.
Yeah.
If the dumb became normal, then the dumb is really dumb, like incapably dumb. And so it's a huge liability for the rest of culture because your dumb before just suffered themselves. The dumb today makes everybody suffer. And as technology and innovations make... yesterday's smart people seem average and normal, right? The distance to the dumb people even gets more vast as well. So what the hell do you do with a bunch of NPC placeholders that can't, not only don't want to, they can't participate?
Yeah.
So there has to be a whole science around doing what I'm suggesting, is take everybody who's too dumb to really do anything, put them in a control group and put them through the practices of trying to get them good at something, away from culture's, pressures to keep them dumb and give them excuses and make them into a victim.
Do you think it's dumb or do you think it's lazy? Or is it both?
Well, one and the same, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah?
Because think about what your motivation would be to swing that golf club, right? Why do you swing a golf club in the first place? Well, because you get successes, you get check box that makes you feel good. You're good at something. That's the ego giving you sort of like either a carrot or stick over whether or not you want to do the thing again. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not motivated for anything, this sucks and this sucks and this sucks. It's not lazy. There's nothing in it to motivate you.
And I think maybe some fear. I feel like there's a lot of fear in people that
that's
I might
across
look
all.
dumb. I don't want to do it.
That's across all spectrums. There's not a there's no more fear over here. There's just a more accumulation of liabilities over here. So if you're not good at anything, then everything feels like it sucks. Where if you're in the middle and you're good at a couple things, so you romance the things you're good at and you don't practice the things you're not, because that's the stuff that's going to make you fearful, well, then you have choices in it where you don't have to invite the fear in, because I'm going to go over here and do the things that I'm good at. Like donuts make me feel good. I'm going to eat donuts and I'm going to have no fear because that's me, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's the real rub and danger in this. Okay, so I use the example. If you could travel back in time and meet yourself, right, and advise yourself how to make life easier, would you take the risk that when you then come back and get to visit yourself in the future, it will be such a different person that there won't be any of you built into the person that changed because of that advice?
I don't know. So you're saying even like my current state has some improvement. If I take my current improvement, go back in time, pep talk old Kelin, then future Kelin won't be anything like current.
Because think of all of those ego things that you romanced and it became the person that you are. All of that washes away. So you open up branches of possibility, the paths that you could have chosen that are not that. So you're a completely different person. And that's not what you would have asked for or visualized when you traveled back in time. You would think all the good parts are going to show up and I'm just going to be able to minimize some of the downside. But it might be completely different in every respect. Would you take the risk?
I would probably not. I would probably not go back and do that.
Okay.
Because, and this is probably going to sound a little cheesy, I feel like there's a benefit to the learning that happens in that time frame. I feel like the experience and the learning how to change and the learning how to stick with something and sort of everything that comes with that and the ability to maybe impart that wisdom onto someone else, I feel is all important. So the process to me, I would see beneficial rather than just the end result.
So if you were to then, let's take Time Machine out of it now, and now you're going to give Kelin wisdom today that's going to change the branches. If you just do status quo, you kind of know where Kellin's going to end up. But if you give yourself advice today to change something, Kelin can be a completely different person in the future. Would you take that risk?
Maybe. Probably.
What's the difference? What's the difference? The only thing is that you know versus there's some mystery in the one that hasn't been realized yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've used the phrase to friends before if we talk about making small changes or getting healthier or something. If someone's like, "Oh, I want to look better, feel better by summer," I tell them, I'm like, "Look, summer will come. It is going to be here. June will be here. So in June, do you want to look and feel this way or look and feel this way? Because it's coming regardless. It's what you do until then that will affect June." So yeah, I mean, you'd have to know what you're gonna do to get there.
And you don't. That is the point.
Yeah.
Is that, it's the same thing. As much sort of motivation that detracts you, you have to be convinced that it's better, worse. Like, let's go Crazy Town real quick.
Crazy Town!
Okay, because there's a third element that's part of this argument that is funner to talk about but has less rooting in reality. And
we are so rarely rooted in reality.
If this is all a simulation, the dumb people and everybody else are just NPCs. They are not real. They are just an invention of the simulation to test you and to be verbs and nouns in your story.
Yes,
right?
I've heard of that. I've heard of people that say they believe they call them like soulless. There are people walking among us that don't actually have souls. They are that sort of non-player character in this game.
Yeah, so if those dumb people, they might have limited scripting. Like when you play a video game and this one dude, he's only been programmed to walk around this car and you can't interact with them in any other way just because they don't have the programming, right? And so in the simulation, are you and the architect of it, where you can change the programming of characters that are around you? I think so. I mean, we come in, have interactions with people every day that we could totally throw them in a different direction with the right interactions.
Yeah. As long as they aren't a non-player character.
But what if everybody's a non-player character, even the ones that are highly interactive, just have more programming? So I can make that NPC, I can almost give them sentience if I give them enough learned data, big data sets with how to use that data and behave a certain way when it interacts back with you. How much of a person can we simulate? I'll argue that we can simulate a whole lot of interactions to make them believable beyond that that's not an NPC versus that is an NPC.
So sort of manipulate them into developing characteristics that will make them more active.
Yeah, so you develop characters that aren't you, and is there another, whatever you are, that is that character that gets that feedback from the interactions from the simulated character that you're interacting with?
So if you have an encounter with someone,
Yes,
and you're like, man, that person changed my life. Like, I look at things a whole other way. Then they did that to you. They
so the
imparted
God
that.
architect, right? So I don't know which it is, right? It could be the God architect that used an NPC character that I ran across and had interactions with me that changed my trajectory. Or it could be the free will architect, which that NPC character was another person like me that was in the simulation that then got their programming updated to interact with me. We're making a connection between programming and conscience or experiences or whatever, and it's the same thing. We learn how to have bigger and more developed versions of that.
Or is it just a bunch of the real players interacting?
Could be, but what would be the difference?
To me, the difference would be if they truly are an NPC, you're not affecting them. You may think you did, but anybody that has an effect on them is probably the real player.
Okay, let's talk about like the perceived reality though. If right now this interaction is you're in a living room in a lower simulation. You got goggles on right now, and you're looking at me through the goggles. Well, you're somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Now, am I in that same plane of existence with you where I have goggles and I'm in that same lower plane, but we're on equal level? I'm in my living room, you're in our living room, but this is on the upper plane where we get to have interactions this way. Or am I on my own plane and I'm the only person in that plane? And you are on your plane and you're the only person in that plane, and we can only connect with one another through the connections between those simulations, right? So then there isn't a me and you. I could be a form that is only in my imagination, and so could you.
That's what I was going to say. How do I know you're really you?
Exactly. Right.
This could just be my experience, and when I leave here, you disappear.
That's right. And that I could have been the NPC. Now, I think I'm real because I'm a program that's being run, right?
Yeah.
And it's the nesting doll of the simulation theory, where in this one, like, we're going to put ourselves in another simulation that might be in another simulation, which is, you remember Inception?
The movie
Gotta
Inception?
watch Inception, yeah.
I have seen, it's a scary movie, right?
No.
I'm thinking of Insidious.
Yeah, Inception is basically about these people who put themselves in a dream state, and they are interacting with people in a dream state, and they can do it on command. But then they put themselves in a dream state within a dream state, and it sort of like really demonstrates what the simulation nesting dolls could look like. We could be 1,000 simulations deep. We could be in a version of ourselves that put on ourselves in a simulation, and then we wise up and put ourselves in another simulation, not knowing that we're already in a simulation until we're 1,000 of those deep. And that's why I say, like, we want to think that everything is homogeneous, but then science is dictating that there are things above and below, right, that are suggesting that we're not getting clear picture. We're only able to measure the things within our simulation, things like black holes and dark matter and things that are hard to measure from our vantage point has to have a, command from a lower level or an upper level.
Yeah. We've talked before about the phenomenon, I guess, of like, you haven't seen someone in a long time, they cross your mind, and then suddenly they call you up or you see them somewhere. That's been happening to me probably a handful of times in the last week. Either I thought of something that I hadn't heard from in a while, or I thought of something, and then all of a sudden I see it. So could those be us sort of plugging those things in purposely in this other realm or plane? I'm trying to explain how I mean this by, we don't think we know, but maybe we did. And that's almost our minds sort of connecting with what we remember from this other plane.
Well, you're saying remembering, and I think you're using single dimensional philosophy. So think about it. If I am 1,000 Joes deep, where I've put myself in a simulation 1,000, and I could connect down and take number 342, whatever that dude is down there is also connected to a plane that's also connected to a simulation, right? It doesn't have to be one great one. You might be able to use the intellect, the knowledge, and the ability all the way down to every version of yourself on an infinite level.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Maybe not remembering, but like, oh, that's so interesting that I just thought of this person and then they called me up. What a coincidence. But maybe I was interacting with that person in some other plane and my mind sort of just connecting to that.
Right.
Right. Like sort of realizing. Deja vu. What do you think happens with deja vu?
Well, it's the same thing with the dark matter, things that are immeasurable. Like even when you're unconscious and dreaming, like I think all of that are elements of the whoever designed the simulation built in components that can't be explained by the nouns and verbs within that simulation because it exists outwardly. So anything that you can't get a grasp on is probably a portion of a place that you can't visit with this set of visors on.
It's interesting you bring up dreams. So I think dreams are really interesting. And I've always heard about dreams sort of being that like, some people say like when you dream, where do you go? Like, is that another plane? Is it some other experience you could be having? Are you somewhere in your mind? But I've noticed most of my dreams can be explained by something I know I saw that day or recently. I saw a movie over the weekend. It had snakes in it. So I had a dream that had snakes in it. And every little detail I could be like, oh, okay. It looked funny. It was a weird dream state. It made no sense, but really, okay, this meant this because I saw this person. Now they were in my dream. And, oh, they were dressed funny because I happened to see this thing in a movie. So how do you know then that it's not just your brain jumbling up images you saw and that it could be something more meaningful? Or maybe more real.
Let's use this example. So do you have a Oculus or any kind of VR things?
No.
Okay, so I will take you through it and tell you what the experience is like.
Okay.
All right, so every night at 8 o'clock, you put your visor on, and there's a bunch of people that also put their visors on, and you guys play poker, right? So when you're looking around with your visors, you see a set of hands, and you can see a body, and there's an avatar of you within the game. You log in at 8 o'clock, everybody's in there, and they're all talking, and you're contributing. And when I'm looking in the living room, it's just you standing in the middle with moving around like you're moving around in this other world. You are... your observations are in the simulated world. My observation of you is in the real world in the middle of the living room. So when 9 o'clock hits and the poker game is done, you take the visor off. Your character just kind of slumps down on the floor and you're not really there anymore. You've now gone back to the living room world. Okay? Mm-hmm. Well, you have a connection, direct one-to-one, because you're controlling the visor. The one below you, okay, when that one takes off its visor, you don't have a connection with the lower simulation, right? Because it is birthed you, right?
I think I lost my way there. I don't have a connection to the lower what?
So you take off the visor of first person Kelin and you see the living room. The Kelin below you, right? You don't have a connection with the below you Kelin because you are a child of their simulation. All right. But their experiences and their abilities are still part of you. Like when you go into the poker game and have a conversation with XYZ person, you know those people that are there. You know the game that's being played. But to that world, like it doesn't know what you experienced when you were there. Right? So when you visit a dream, you could be going upward, you can be going downward, and having a reality that is just disconnected from the living room. And you really can't tell anybody about it because it's probably not the same environment that you were in. Just like when you go to the simulated world, it's probably a bunch of, really fantastic backdrops and really glittery spectacles and everybody's dressed as orangutans or whatever. Like you can't bring that reality back to the living room and describe to me what that was like. It's just too weird. It doesn't have a connection to living room reality.
So you're saying they could be things that have happened? Or I'm still confused.
Okay.
Is the dream feedback in your brain of your experiences?
Well, I think where you're getting confused is reality, that word. And what is the, when you were in the simulation, was that the reality? In the living room, was that your reality? The lower depths, was that reality? Like it's really only what you accept as being whatever the reality is. If you've got, a mental burden where, what was that one, where he played Nash, where he had spies that were chasing around and he was encoding military secrets and whatever. But anyway, a beautiful mind.
Oh.
A beautiful mind. So the guy had a psychosis where he was visiting a place that he was experiencing, but nobody else was. And it was 100% real to him because his mind allowed him to believe that that was the truth because he was seeing it, he was interacting with it. It was as real to him as it needs to be. Right. So if you trusted in the dreams that were real and you practiced making your dreams an authority on reality, maybe the dream state is your reality and this is not the reality anymore. It's how much you trust it, how defined it is, how high resolution it is how believable it gets.
Well, what do you think about the fact that so many people have similar dreams or reoccurring dreams? Like if you look in any dream book, they talk about dreams involving teeth, your teeth falling out, because so many people have dreams about teeth falling out. Big giant waves hitting you. A lot of people have that. Elevators are common themes among many people. Why do you think that is, I wonder?
I don't have a real good answer. Like we can on the fly talk through it.
That's almost sort of an argument for another plane actually existing, because how else do so many people experience something so similar?
So if I put you in a simulation for hang gliding or bungee jumping or free falling or whatever, like these are things that you know that there's a plane below you that if you hit the ground in the simulation, that's not real. You're not going to die, right? So if your brain was freed from consequence for wherever you're at, you might have a training facility that takes things that you're fearful for, knowing that you're going to wake up and you get to experience them without those repercussions. So the big wave hitting you, like what would that be like? What if I was a bank robber and I knew I wasn't going to go to jail, I can get away. Maybe I'm willing to take risks in the simulation as I'm training my brain to be less fearful. Right. And then when I know that I was okay at the end of the day, then we're good. So you die in this lifetime, but the guy below you knows that if you die in that, you're just going to wake up in the simulations below you. This simulation disappears, just like the hang gliding simulation would disappear when it says game over, respawn. Right. So training, as we talked about, like if we are kept from developing the golf club ability because of the fear and ego of being judged, right?
Yeah.
But then you were in a room and you could swing the golf ball and you remove the consequences of swinging the golf ball in public, then you're more free and open to do the thing, and then your brain gets healthier because it's willing to do a thing that you were afraid of before. So it could absolutely be something that's meant to make a better version of you.
That's
ahead.
Interesting, because this dream over the weekend, so long story short, we watched a movie, in the movie, there happened to be snakes. I hate snakes to the point that even in a movie, I will probably look away. I don't even want to see them on a screen. Well, that night, I had a snake in my dream. It was different, again, because like a dream, it made no sense. It was oddly shaped, oddly sized. It acted weird. It hissed like snakes don't do. Anywho. But I do remember a weird part of the dream that this thing was going at my daughter. And where I would typically have run away, I knew like, oh no. And I grabbed something and just smashed it and beat it and kill it. And its guts were on my hands. And I remember being so disgusted, but thinking, oh my God, in a moment that I had to do something, I did it. And to me, all kinds of things came from that. One, like movie, had a snake, dream, had a snake. Had to face a fear. And then I even thought to myself, Unpopular Opinions, a couple weeks ago, we talked about if you had to kill someone, could you do it? And then I thought, is that still in my brain? I had to do this and I did it to save someone, all these different connections I make. And that's when my brain says, well, yeah, it's just a lot of thoughts in here. And at night, they all sort of just piece together and run rampant in your mind. And
a lot of people, especially when it comes to that neural development side, a lot of people accidentally develop a skill set, right? They can do things with their mind that other people can, and they didn't intend to do that, right? They had some desire, and maybe they were a little bit flirting with it in real life, and it put the brain on notice to start doing that, right? And so they look at it and say, oh, interesting. So what if I told you that you could take control of your dreams, you could populate it with everything you wanted to be in there, and you knew the purpose for it? Like if right now you were like, okay, well, Joe knows it all, right?
Yeah.
And dreams are my training facility. I can bring anything I want to get better at and develop into there. I'm not going to do it for entertain. Like when we entertain ourselves, it's usually to waste time, right? We're not really looking to push on something, like make us think about things or
I've
whatever.
Had dreams that were so like enjoyable or fun that it was like, oh, if I could, I would stay in this dream.
Yeah, you could put a cartridge in, and when you go to sleep, whatever you wanted to learn that day, like you want to fly Apache helicopters, you go into saying, hey, during my dream, I want to simulate with knowing that if I crash or I'm not good at it, it's okay, no repercussions for it, but I'm going to do Apache helicopters. And then you populated what you're going to dream about, and you got so good at telling your mind what to do when it was unconscious that you didn't have to leave it open to like chance that this thing appeared to my dream. You did that on purpose, and the snake came in your dream because you wanted it to. Because you wanted.
I don't ever want a snake in my dream.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, what if this gift is a utility of the human mind to develop, and everybody just abuses that ability, never really makes use of it, but constantly talks to each other about how it happened to happen without ever figuring out how to make it happen? That would be an injustice, would it not?
Yeah.
Future versions of ourselves might figure that out, and it might not be such a mystery.
How about this story?
Okay.
I'd love to get your take on it.
Yeah.
When I was in 5th grade, I had a teacher that told us this story one time. So this is, if it really happened, according to her, this really happened, and I believe her. She and her husband were friends with another couple, and the guy of that couple passed away. They were all 4 of them were very good friends. They hung out all the time. They went to dinner all the time. And so they were all sort of grieving the loss of their friend's husband. One night she had this dream that they were all about to go somewhere again, and they were at one of their homes, and they were waiting to leave, and this guy was in the basement. And they were like, come on, we're waiting. We got to go. Let's get going. And he says, just go on without me. I'm fine. I'm good. You guys just go ahead on without me. And they're like, well, just hurry up. Let's go. And they said, no, I'll be fine. Just go. And she woke up, and that was it. And she told her husband, and she said her husband went like pale. And she said, what? And he's like, I had the exact same dream of him in the basement saying the same thing. And she called her friend, and she had the exact same dream. The teacher, her husband, and the deceased guy's wife all claimed on the same night to have dreamt that exact same thing. What do you think happened there?
I'm thinking that all of them were on the same plane in some living room, 5, simulations down, right? And that information made its way back up to that that dream version.
They said they took it as him in this heaven or wherever saying, "I'm fine. Go on without me. I'll catch up," kind of thing. And I was like, "Whoa, what happened there?"
Yeah.
But
cool. Again, if you had the ability to drill down and collect information from simulations that you're not an active participant in, you would have an infinite amount of knowledge. You can dig for anything you want. You could take any potential in the future, that information with you. Mm-hmm. And just like we don't use our dreams, we wouldn't use that ability because everybody on this plane wants to believe that this is the real reality. Things above or below, that's less real, doesn't have an authority over me. This is what's real. And that's what keeps it. I'm telling you, it would be chaos if everybody bought out to this reality and just started behaving like, no big deal, right? No, who cares what happens?
This isn't even real life.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, my daughter told me too when I was telling her about my snake dream. She also had a dream that same night that involved a snake. And now we described our dreams and our snakes were very different. But we just chalked it up to, well, we both watched that movie and maybe we both hate snakes. Thus, we dream about snakes. But what if that's not it? What if we were in some sort of reality together?
And I don't make the mistake just like we all buy in this reality because we want definitive yes no, right? The deal is that we don't know, right? And either you're going to say, well, is time real or not? Or is the expansion of the universe real or not? Well, you're never going to really have that answer. So you have to be able to take things from other possibilities that don't have direct evidence of doing and see if you can use them for some kind of information. But you don't want to buy into them like they're a dogma where if time doesn't exist to you, right? And I'm going to say, if you believe in time, you're a stupid head, right? Because the minute that you push back on me, I can't prove that time isn't real. But I've predicated a lot of skill based on if time wasn't real, then I'd be able to do this thing and I can do this thing. So to me, I've been able to work time out of most of my equations. Could I ever teach you how to work time out of your equations? Probably not, right? So just like your skill with dream control, right? You wouldn't be able to teach me how to do the dream control because it's a for you skill. It's not. You can give me, tips on visiting there, but I'm not going to ever be there with you. So it's not something that it's hard to train or practice that between two people. Keeps us separated in that way.
It's just so coincidental that we're talking about this because
it's not. There's no such thing as no coincidence.
No such thing as coincidence.
No space. It's all just a simulation.
Last night, when I was saying goodnight to my daughter, she has a little dream catcher someone gave her hanging in her room, and she said, "I wish dream catchers really worked." And I said, "Why? To catch your nightmares?" She's like, "Yeah, if they could just catch all my nightmares, then I never have bad dreams." And I was like, "Oh, well, good night." I got nothing for you kind of thing. But that is interesting. When I was a kid, I remember a relative of mine, she was much, much older, told me, when you go to sleep at night, if you just saw something, maybe a scary movie or something you don't want to dream about, she told me, say 3 times, "Don't dream about that, don't dream about that, don't dream about that." And you won't.
That. Oh.
For years I believed it worked, but
no. Here's what I want you to do with your daughter.
Okay.
Instead of her saying, I wish dream catchers
caught all the bad dreams.
Right?
Yeah.
Say that every night. See if she can make dream catchers catch bad dreams and say it 3 times. Because first of all, this works better if you say the positive side of things.
Okay.
I don't want to dream about that. The subconscious brain doesn't hear don't, can't, won't, shouldn't, whatever. So you say the thing that you do want, right? So in this case, I want to dream about things that make me enlightened and happy and whatever. Say that 3 times rather than don't bad dream, because your subconscious is like bad dream, bad dream, bad dream, if it can't hear those other words. So have her try that. Say on a regular basis, "I'm so glad that dream catchers work." Right?
Yeah.
And see if she can make that happen with the dream catcher.
I'm so glad that dream catchers work.
Yeah.
and then believe that it's going to work.
Yeah. Why do people carry, lucky rabbit's feet? Why do they have, different, what are those things called? I don't have them, but
Lucky rabbit's foot.
you don't go under ladders.
Oh,
You don't-
superstitions.
Superstitions.
Yeah.
Yeah, they believe in the superstition and they behave according to the superstition, so they get the benefit of the superstition, right? And then,
But see, I felt like that for years. I would do that. Don't dream about that. Don't dream about that. Don't. And I feel like, to me, it worked because I believed that this is now something I don't have to worry about.
yes, you trusted the thing as an article of authority, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we were
Like,
talking
I
about?
believe this works. I said it 3 times. It's not happening.
Yeah.
And then I go to bed.
Well, you can
thinking
test
it's not
it
gonna
by
happen.
be a believer in it, get its benefits, right? And then break away from it and see if you can get benefits without the thing. And then what you're going to say is, okay, why was it working? Because I told myself it was whatever, and I had the lucky rabbit's foot, and then I was like, here's my lucky mouse, and do the same thing with the lucky mouse. And like, maybe I don't need a physical thing. Maybe this is my lucky life, or maybe this is my lucky thought. And then you're like, wow, every time I think that I'm connected to being able to manipulate an outcome based on good feelings towards that thing, it always happens. So it's not about a physical thing. It's about mind preparation and the practice.
Like my Friday the 13th. Have I told you about that?
Maybe.
I think I've mentioned it.
Good.
I have good luck on Friday the 13th.
There you go.
And it's only because now I had a good day as a kid. It happened to be on Friday the 13th, and I have perpetuated that my whole life.
And it works
And
for
I
you.
will look for it. I could have a shit morning, but I will tell myself, no, it's Friday the 13th. I don't have bad days. And it's almost like I've just rewired myself to look for good things on that day.
And then people who are the opposite, it's Friday the 13th, full moon, weird shit happens to them and whatever, and then they get confirmation. So if you get confirmation when you do the opposite, and they get confirmation when they get what they're asking for, it's programmable.
Okay, how about this?
Yeah.
Because I feel like we always get on this subject too, but you believe in God?
Yeah.
So you always hear things about, give it to God, or if you're worried about something, either pray or give it to God or whatever, involve God in some capacity, and then you don't have to worry about that thing anymore. Is God taking that worry from you, or are you retraining your brain just as you would in any other instance, like with the dream catcher?
It's that same programming.
Does not God doing it at all?
When you take the math downward and upward, it arrives at an architect. If you give it the name God, it's still the same thing. It has the ability to take things and giving authority control over it, just like the lucky rabbit's foot, just like the superstition. If you believe it and give the trust, and it's a programmable event, you are just attributing it to the creator, right? It's all you're doing.
So, okay. If we were all AI robots and we learned how to do something, really, it started with a creator, whoever created our robot, which then gave us the ability to learn how to do things. So is that sort of what you mean?
Yeah, so today you
creator?
got a new skill set that you wanted as your AI robot, right? It came from an engineer that either directly gave you that, put new programming and turned that switch to give you the skill, or gave you the ability to learn that skill on your own. So you can say, thank you, architect, for making this thing a possible deal.
So it may not necessarily be this being that at that moment reaches down and plucks something from you, but this being is like, I've already programmed your brain with the ability to do that.
When saying those words, you're hearing the freaking Bible. Are you not? Are you not hearing what you just said? So yes.
Oh, that's like a light bulb moment.
Yeah, right.
Eureka.
Yeah. And it's our fascination with the plane right above us and having an understanding and how we interact with the plane that's above us. That is a skill with connecting something outside of this world.
So really then, because I've even had like questions and struggled with this idea of like, if whether maybe I was praying for something or an answer to something, or I kept thinking I should do something and I wasn't sure. And it was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And is it me finding the answer? Am I training my own brain to do this myself? Or is God helping me? Really, they're synonymous. God helped you by allowing you to train yourself to help yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
That is fascinating.
And if you take sort of like the miracles part of it, that's how the trust authority happens to the upper plane. There's that proof concept of things that I know I did not do myself. This had to have been a gift from something else, where I had a vision in the future. I took advantage of some kind of piece of information that we didn't have together, like nobody else really has. That's a little gift and a little wink from a plane that's above
God
or below
wink.
us. It's exactly right.
Yeah.
But it's all the same. Picking up information that you know was not because of you. It came from somewhere else, and it could have been the free will programming or a direct new line of code that were added to your simulation.
Yeah. My pastor said something one time. So I really like music. And over the last couple of years, for whatever reason, however I got into it, I got really into sending songs to people, where if a song comes on or I hear a song and somebody pops into my head and I can't get that person out of my head, I feel like I should send the song to them. And some people say, oh, well, that's a gift. You know, that's God. You should do that. And some people say, look, if you're thinking of someone, regardless of it being a gift from God, just it's nice, doesn't hurt anything. It's a little, hey, I'm thinking about you, and here's a little comfort song kind of thing. Well, I had told my pastor, I said, I feel like I'm being silly and I'm probably going to stop doing this. And I said, I think it's me. I'm making it happen. It's nobody pops into my head that, like, I don't know. I know the person. I might even know a little bit about what's going on with them. Maybe they told me, maybe they posted about it on social media. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm thinking of them because I already know they're going through something, and I listen to the music anyways, and I'm making it apply to their situation. So I'm not going to do this anymore. And she said, we are not that powerful. Like, we're not that powerful. If you are feeling this and you're making those connections, do you think you're strong enough to do that by yourself, or could someone else maybe be doing that through you or with you or teaching you how? And so that just sort of stuck with me, is like, anytime I think, well, I did that, you know, like, that wasn't some higher power, that wasn't some, you know, whatever. I wanted to see something, so I saw it and I made it happen, and so it must be fake. And she would just say, you're not that strong. It came from somewhere. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Something taught me to put those things together.
And when we centralize the thing that makes you think that, like the utility of ego, like when we talked about, swinging the golf club out there, the ego, when it talks to you, like, what if you just took your ego, you crushed it, and there was no such thing as an ego, right? You didn't have to figure out paradynamics. You didn't have to figure out how you'd be treated. You didn't have to figure out where you were going to be, right? Looking at the self-centered, looking out for you, right, is gone. And all you are is a vessel of discovery, observation, and whatever. Your ego is going to tell you in that moment that that's the most irresponsible version of you, because you're going to have all this risk and it's going to destroy you. It's going to crush your soul and whatever, right? Yeah. So whenever the ego comes up, I know what part of me is trying to limit my observation and what I'm able to contemplate, because it tries to give you some reason not to. There's some victimhood, some fear, something like that. And it perpetuates, I think the primitive nature is the self-preservation, and I know the ego has to exist when it keeps you from dying, right? But I think in anything else other than dying, I think it's works against you, and it keeps you contained in that normal band of everybody else. It wants to draw you back into a riskless environment. So like when if you picture having an architect that's in control of everything, and they can give free will or they can directly change things, then I don't necessarily think you need to contemplate whether or not that was you or that was them, because what does it matter? It's synonymous. Because then you can make the double jump and say, well, if it was you, how do you know that they didn't want you to think it was you so that you would do a different thing? Like, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because
Right?
I mean, I would always feel silly, or I would fear that someone was going to think I was weird.
Yeah.
And it even for a long time, especially if it was someone I didn't know well, like it might have just been a Facebook friend that I don't know very well, but just sort of felt this urge to send them something, I would be like, all right, please don't think I'm weird, but I just want to send this to you. I'm not a weirdo, I swear. And somebody told me, they said, stop doing that. Stop leading with that. Stop leading with, you're going to think this is weird, but, or, hey, I don't mean to be odd, but I'm going to give this thing to you kind of thing. And they said, just do it. What's it hurting? It's not hurting anybody. At the very least, they thought, oh, thanks for thinking of me. And they go on with their day. Maybe the song does not in any way speak to them, but they're like, thanks anyways. Or maybe it does, and then mission accomplished. But either way, what's it matter? Just do it. And so I was like, all right. So I just do it. And I just tell people, I'll send them songs. I was like, hey, you know, I send songs to people, and I feel like this one's yours today, so enjoy. And if it doesn't hurt them, be weird.
Okay. So here's an interesting one. So let's just say that you could convert yourself into a ghost, right? And I'm going to say that you can pick one person and you could just follow them around for 5 years. And you had to be with them all the time. You could see everything they were doing. You can hear every thought that was in their head. And then it wasn't about Kelin. Kelin doesn't have any real experiences. Your only experience now is to watch and observe what this person does, right? Mm-hmm. How long could you do that before, you know, it was boring and you're not living anymore. You're just following someone and you don't have any free will. You just have to do whatever thing they're doing.
I'm just a part of their life.
Right. So how long do you think you could do that before you're like, that was cool for like a day, but at this level, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. So that's question number one. I have a second question.
It might depend on the person I'm following.
Okay.
Are they a fascinating person, or are they a couch potato? And I'm
even if
like,
they're
let's
fascinating,
go.
they are not fascinating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Yeah,
365 days a year.
I'd eventually be like, all right.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Like, it would be cool to do that, but that's
For a
not
little
where you
bit
want
of
to spend
time.
yourself.
Yeah.
Now reverse it, and somebody came up to you and said, Kelin, I want to tell you that there is a ghost following you around. It can read all of your thoughts, and it's watching everything that you do all the time, and they are your observer. Does it make you do different things, different choices? Like, would you all of a sudden get embarrassed about something that you're doing because you know that ghost person is watching everything you do and can hear every thought that you're making?
I would probably feel a little more self-conscious.
Would it make you do different things?
Maybe. Part of my brain says, well, have they been doing this already? And is there a reason they're doing it? Am I supposed to act natural? Am I being studied? I don't know why I would ask that, but I would.
What we learned from, I think it was The Real World was the first one that did this. So when the show just came out, people didn't really have their heads wrapped around having a camera like film every
All the
second of your
time.
day.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what they did was performative because they knew someone was watching.
Yeah.
And then
there's a term for that I learned in a class, and I can't remember what it is, but
and then at a certain point, they got so used to it that they forgot that other eyeballs were looking what they were doing. Now all of a sudden they stopped behaving different, and they got used to just being followed by Mr. Ghost.
Yeah, probably. I think at first it would sort of be a little more self-conscious, maybe acting a little differently. But after a while, if I wasn't somehow reminded, then I'd probably, just go back to doing whatever I would normally do.
Okay, so let's just say we'll bring the God analogy back in. Let's just say you pray to God, so God pays attention to you, and now God is watching you in the short term. Do you think, because now you're reminded that you're not the only one in your head, you've got a passenger following you around, that you behave differently and you make different decisions, and then so you get better outcomes because you know there's an observer that's keeping you honest? But then after a little while, you forget that someone's looking in on you and
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Just making those subtle connections is all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll think about that one later tonight.
I'm going to dream about this tonight.
I hope you do.
And then I'm going to say, did I dream about this because we talked about it, or did I dream about this for deeper meaning?
Joe just told you that if you take it home, you're going to. So it doesn't have to be.
going
You don't
to.
have to have that. Answer that question right now. When you go home and you say those things, and it does happen, what's your relationship going to be like? Did you make that happen, or are you going to be equally as shocked that the thing that I told you was going to happen happened?
Yeah, because I will inevitably, my brain wants to sabotage everything, and it will
You mean
say,
your ego, not your brain.
my ego, yes, will be like, someone put this thought into your head. Now
wasn't
you're
you.
thinking about it, and now you're going to make
You're
it happen.
just a victim of it, so don't even go down that
Yeah.
pathway. I'll keep you safe from having enlightenment in a
Yep.
department that you weren't willing to hit.
And then I have to hear that you're not that powerful.
So
You're
that
not
you got
that
two. You got two things. You got to dream about it. You got to populate your subconscious going into it, and you got to pre-squash the egos. And if you know that they're going to say that, like what would you do if you knew that a friend of yours, that the minute that they see you, they're going to criticize you, right? You know it. You're going to walk through the door. First thing that they're going to say is say the thing that you know that they know about you, and they can't wait to unload on you and crush your spirit a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Do you take offense and you lay down some cover fire for yourself, or do you just walk into it and be, how'd that happen?
Yeah, I'd probably say, how am I going to react when this happens to get through it? Because it's going to happen.
That's it. Like, all right. Let's bring it out of crazy town. I wanted to talk to you about this because a lot of this type of stuff has been happening in news. This is entertainment, and what an actress, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and that Justin dude. You've heard about this?
Yeah, Baldini or yes. The
Okay.
drama.
All right. So first of all,
I can't believe you know about this, by the
Oh,
way.
I
But
do.
go on, because you like Blake Lively,
yes,
and I love Ryan Reynolds.
there's a connection here.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't off the wall, even though this is the worst transition in broadcast or podcast history.
Not necessarily because we were talking about dreams, and they are our dream people. So
Okay.
segue.
I might have dreamt about her a couple times. Maybe not.
Could have.
Yeah. Anyway, so first of all, like when your profession is being romantic with people on the screen, and then the real world you actually have a romantic connection, the simulated romance between two people, and could you be at home, your husband's on screen making out with someone? Can you separate the simulated romance, and that's not really them when they're there, that's their job? Or are you like, pick a different profession?
Oh, God, that's such a hard question. This sounds hypocritical because I myself have always been interested in acting. I've never really done it much, but it's just something I'm very interested in. And so part of me will say, well, I understand it means nothing. It's pretending. But if I saw him do it, I'd be like, I don't like
But
this.
what if the whole time the ego is going to tell you that going into it, it's professional, it's my job. And when you get lip locked with someone who's attractive, successful, what's going to stop you from having a biological response that creates attraction and, really liking
'cause it happens.
Because
It
you're not
happens
hating
all the
it.
time.
You're not hating it. I don't know. Nobody will say that the whole time they couldn't stand getting to have a partner that's not your own and going to town for the sake of your job. Fringe benefit for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively got together. They were in a movie together.
Yeah.
And that happens fairly often, I would say. So whether or not they could then sort of use professionalism and self-control to change that mindset and go back to not being into them is one thing. But for the time being, for the the filming of the movie, could two people be into each other? I think absolutely.
And
I think
it would
it'd
be a bad
weird.
movie if you didn't buy into the fact that these two people were digging each other. And if they're
Yeah.
faking it to such a level where the audience buys that they're into each other, then there's a dividing line that
Yeah.
is probably have been crossed. So we have, and because we're going to be getting into like simulated sex experiences and sex with robots and the relationship, like we
We're so weird as a species, but go on.
right, but we're doing it in other things that seem to be okay with it, where two people get together and have simulated sex with one another for
And it's
the
a job.
gazing eyes of other people, and that's a
Yeah.
respected job that we pay big money at. So it's weird how we're able to take certain things, make them taboo, and then everybody's repulsed by them, and other ones we're able to say, oh no, professionals,
Yeah.
totally professional.
That's not weird at all.
No,
Yeah. Is that Blake Lively's and Justin's issue?
well,
I thought they were fighting about a couple different things.
well, bring me up to speed, because I dug into it superficial, like really peripheral.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I can't believe that relationship can withstand romantic things to begin with, but she's been doing it for lots of years. So what's the trouble with this one?
Yeah.
And then there was some, they have a professional that works with actors and actresses about making scenes believable by things to do to fake it, even if you're not into them. And I think there was some stuff where they provided a professional, but they didn't take advantage of it. And then there was certain things that were sexual harassment in there where it did go too far. And I'm like, how do you decide that?
Yeah,
How-
because Blake Lively is suing Justin.
yeah.
And yeah, it started with supposedly they even fought about her being bossy on set, her wanting things a certain way. They fought about, she claims he was unprofessional in the fact that some of the romantic scenes, he continued to be very romantic when he didn't need to be, supposedly. And there's been a video released now that shows them, cameras were on, obviously. There's video footage of this, and they are like dancing or canoodling or something very close with each other. And there's no sound in the film. So they are literally just saying whatever they want to say. All they are capturing is the imaging of him just like playing with her hair and smiling and them holding hands, but they don't have to say any lines. So she's saying something like, he says, "Oh, you smell nice." And she's like, "Oh, it's spray tan." And she's like, "Sorry if I'm getting it all over you. I'm like covered in spray tanner." And he's like, "No, it smells good. You're fine." And there's this dialogue that is not movie related. And I think she's claiming that he was still very flirty, touchy, romantic when they both knew they didn't need to be right then and there. And I think he was like, absolutely, I had to stay in character. We were still being watched. That's why we're doing this. Maybe it wasn't a full take, but, and so I guess there's this dispute over that, which I think came up from a whole bunch of other
what's
things.
different between the sexual stuff and like, what's the dude who played Johnny Cash?
Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah. Dude would stay in character for like months to be able to practice doing that character. So
Yeah.
if he does that and then you stay in character on this department, aren't they just method actors doing what they do? And why is the sexual part? Because they need it as plot points in the movie, right? It is if you want to keep sex completely out of entertainment, I can see that. Then you don't have to worry about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as soon as you drop them in and you take the benefits of sex plots in movies, then the downside is that you have people that get romantic and do romantic things, and each one of them have different methods for being able to get in that state.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen and heard and read different like videos as far as acting and techniques and things of that nature where one, I don't know who he was some sort of acting coach, was explaining that in order to really sort of come across in a certain way and be believable, you have to believe it. You have to really feel that this is real and this is happening, and whatever you have to do to put yourself in that headspace, you have to at least temporarily truly believe whatever it is that you're trying to make the audience believe.
Yeah.
And so I could totally see someone wanting to sort of stay in that certain mode for a period of time
Right.
from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like you're kind of not you, but you're kind of creating a contradiction in that we want to risk and not pay homage to the sanctity of relationships, while at the same time using sexuality as a chip to make money. And those things don't wash. So let's just say I'm like, you know what, we got to have these scenes, so let's get an actual couple and we'll cast them as our thing so we can keep the the sanctity of two people together, rather than ripping one apart, putting them with a person that's not their husband or wife, and then making them do something that destroys the sanctity of that deal, but then making them or tempting them into getting a believable version of it that might actually become a believable, but then rip those feelings out and saying, but there's also a level of decorum, a level of ethics that you have to keep. Like, that doesn't seem where you can't both minimize those relationships and maximize those relationships at the same time.
Yeah. That would be incredibly difficult, I would think. How do you agree to enter a situation like this, to make a movie where both parties know what it entails, but then still not cross a line in some way? How do you know the line? I don't even know. I don't even know how you would go about setting boundaries in an instance that you have to act like there are no boundaries. And where is it art and method acting, and where is it abuse and overreach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 80-20 rule probably hits here too, where 20% of the actors can completely disconnect from the emotional side of sex and those relationships, and they just do their job. 80% of them are going through the motions knowing that they've got, some risk on the line of developing something. That's why, like you said, so many of those actresses get together after the fact, because they develop something when put in those situations. But it minimizes, especially in that industry, it minimizes probably, think of how many marriages have been destroyed from other people creeping into them. And that's all the evidence you need that they're playing with fire, and a lot of them get burnt by it.
Especially when it's probably not, if it came about that way, it's probably not a very strong relationship, because it was sort of that superficial bond. I think a lot of sort of actors will get together after making a movie, and then they almost always break up because there is nothing else there. It was just that temporary chemistry. And when that goes away or falls apart, there's no foundation there. But yeah, that's
all right. Well, let's walk through it, because we're going to change off of entertainment and we're going to talk about swingers, right? Swingers are the same psychology, right? You got a couple and they're like entertaining the fact that they bring another person in, right?
Yep.
And
or people.
Well, we're going to do one.
Okay.
Right?
One at a time.
Think about your relationship, and then the role that you would play and the role that he would play. So I'm going to walk like a Heather Graham or a Blake Lively and say, this is the person that's going to play with you guys, right? He would have a different level of objection than you would have, for sure. Just like if I brought a Ryan Reynolds in and says, okay,
or
now
Channing Tatum,
and now it's playtime, and both of you would have the opposite of the objection. Part of you would say, I like my relationship, and if this is a toy thing, I'm kind of open to it. I get massive part of the benefits. And then he would be like, well, there's more risk in this, and I'm not going to get very much out of it. I got to look in her eyes and know that she's enjoying herself, and I've got to be able to get off on the fact that she's enjoying herself as much as she's enjoying getting off on her own. You can see where that leverage on the relationship is different depending on what you bring into it. And, think about the things that you would worry about, the real things that you would be afraid of now. And I don't even know if it's ending the relationship or changing it in a way that's broken and I can't get it back kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's what you add to it.
And this is interesting too, because it even sort of ties back with what we were talking about before. I knew someone one time who was a swinger. She and the guy she was with at the time, are no longer together, shocker. But they would meet up with other couples or other people, and they would get together. And she even told me there are sets of rules Like, you can't talk one-on-one with each other instead of the group. This is only a group thing. This is strictly just we're doing this. And if two other people not in the immediate relationship started talking and messaging and sharing and bonding, and maybe they went to dinner together, now it's cheating because you're developing this other bond. And so they have to set boundaries to make that not happen. And I'm like, if you have to actively set boundaries because that's a very real thing, why would you even play with that fire then? It feels like that would just be so much more stressful to constantly fight against something than that I think humans will have a natural tendency to do. It just seems too difficult.
We know enough about us that we will.
Yeah.
It's not like I think we're going to. A majority of the people will give into that. So if I set the sex robot up, right? We set up rules that I'll only use the sex robot in my spare time as a masturbatory aid, right? But then it's really good in different ways. And I think tonight I'm going to choose the robot instead of you, right? That would be a boundary where I cut into what we have and the robot is now getting. Now that would be cheating because I took it. Again, I'm just making sort of like parallels between what we think we can go up to a limit. So you have person one who's going to look at it and say, don't play with fire, right? All the boundaries in the world are just risks that have some benefits, but it has more downside risks that you're going to destroy something, just like going back in time and giving yourself knowledge and changing who you are in the future
like
because
it's
of this.
not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have the person that's like, I'm responsible enough. I'll follow all the rules. But just like the observer over your shoulder when it goes, the rules will have an effect in the short term because you're conscious of them, right? You know the camera crew's right there, so you got to behave a certain way to keep it in safe. But the minute that it diffuses and you get used to it, now the rules are not reminded anymore. Now you are going to go too far, except for the 20% exceptions, right? Everybody's going to get burnt by that deal. And that's why, like I said, all these things are somewhat connected into knowing human nature and what our minds are going to do.
Yeah. I went down a YouTube rabbit hole one day and somehow came across this it was a podcast I watch on occasion. But his guest that day was I don't know if she was self-proclaimed or if there was documentation behind this, but she called herself a sexpert. She was not a therapist, not a counselor, not a doctor, but just sort of, that's why I say it may have even been a self-proclaimed sexpert. And she gave a background of her marriage and everything. And she was very clear that like her husband is her guy, her rock, her prince. He's the most amazing man she's ever known. They love each other. They're very happy. But in this happy relationship, they developed playing with other people. And she's like, I have a boyfriend and he knows that. And, you know, we have certain nights where my boyfriend comes over and all of us play. And I'm just like, there's no way that works. I just don't get it. I would love to hear from someone that truly 100% has a platonic feeling towards someone that they are intimate with. Completely platonic. There's got to be something. She even prefaced this with, before all of this started happening and they started playing, they were in a bad spot where they almost got divorced because he cheated on her and he had an affair. And they worked it out and they found out the reasons it happened and they had open discussion and they realized what each other was looking for and they came together and they fixed the relationship, but then started having sex with other people in an okay. Now with permission, I guess. And so I'm just like, something else is there. I feel like as human beings, can you have one without the other? I don't think our brains are wired for that. Maybe not long term, but temporary. There's got to be a temporary connection there that is more than platonic. And I think anybody that says, no, you can go and hang out and sleep with other people, and it in no way affects your main relationship, I feel like they're lying to themselves. I don't see how our brains would even be wired for that to happen. But maybe AI robots.
Well, they're going to study us.
Yeah.
The AI is going to study and be really confused because here's the thing, so for instance, if I took and said males are promiscuous and naturally we just want to impregnate as many people as we can for the further of the species, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's some upside to that if it benefits me, but the people who depend on me are not going to agree with that it's a worthwhile endeavor, right? And they're going to be the people then that adds risk to whatever it is they do. So just like the whole benefit of having, yours or mine as the target, we're willing to kind of be okay with it more so if the benefit is, is higher for us. But what is it? What is a relationship for? I mean, we do it because we see other people do it, but what is it for? Is it about procreation and sex? And, you take a 90-year-old couple that is not having sex and is not worried of procreating and they get along. Is that like a friendship once the procreation and sex is done? Is it having, a spiritual connection with another person that, you're carrying on a different path than most people, and you don't let people on that path because they can ruin your spirituality? I mean, in each one of those flavors, I think every year that goes by, because we reduce as much of that traditionalism on things, we're willing to forget what it was for in the first place and try to make up like a new one. When I was, it's this dumb analogy, it's probably the dumbest I've ever got. And so my favorite board game was Monopoly, right? And I was like, I played Monopoly a bunch of times. Let me add some flair to Monopoly. And I made up 2 Monopoly boards, and I made up a set of rules where you go up one board and then it connects to the other board, and you go around that board and it adds a whole bunch more properties and whatever, right? And the game was more exciting and it was different and new, but I destroyed everything I liked about the game. I then had to rip the other game away, get back to why I played the game. And, because my complaint was that there were never enough properties because everybody would buy them up. And there was scarcity in every move. There wasn't enough money to do everything that I wanted to do. And once I put the things I thought I wanted in there, I fucking wrecked the game because it was the scarcity and the challenge to it was everything I loved about the game. So in relationships, like, why do you like the game? Like, what about it is the reason that you're there? And then once you've gone off and put the other board on there and almost wrecked it, then you're like, I realized that the thing I thought I wanted wasn't the thing that I really wanted. It was just tempting. This is the real game that I like, and here's why.
It was an interesting idea. I got curious, or I got intrigued, or maybe like, grass is always greener. Like, well, I know this. Maybe there are things I don't know. Maybe things are better. And then almost every time you reach out, you see it, you change the board. We've talked about this with like Christmas and holidays. Why is Christmas awesome? Because Christmas is not every day. Why are holidays fun? Because it's not every day. And I feel like anyone that wants to just go out and be like, oh, well, that was fun. Let me keep doing that. We'll see. It's fun because it's rare, and when it's not, and when it gets real, you realize, oh, that's why I stuck with this one, because I actually like it better.
But we've been doing that since the dawn of time. Every civilization, we advance to a certain level, and then we start playing with the rules of the things. We're taking advantage of all the benefits of the traditionalism that we had, but when we start doing things, we start wrecking shit because we're out of boredom or whatever. But it takes reminding you that there's a camera crew following you around so that you behave differently and have a relationship with the camera crew. Because the minute that you just take it for granted, right, your behaviors go right down in the depths of curiosities, and we will do that every single time.
Yeah, you sort of need that little guidance of like, hey, remember, that didn't work out so well last time. Don't do it again. Bring it on back.
But human nature, if I told you, I said, yeah, if you invite that person in your bedroom, you're going to wreck your marriage and it's never going to be the same. So you have the information, right? I told you that. What's your ego tell you?
Maybe not.
No!
Maybe it won't.
Right?
Maybe we should see. It might be cool.
And if I say you do this thing, Rome did this same stuff, and they say, oh, we're different. We're the freaking exception. That's never going to happen to us.
No, we're cool. We're strong. We're fine. We can go do this, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like little kids. Like they don't want your input on the decision-making side, but they do want your input after when things go to shit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's funny. We say that to our kids all the time. Every time we tell them something is going to happen or something's going to be a certain way and they fight us, I always say, did you think I was born this age? Like, I was your age. Mm-hmm. You realize I was a baby, and I lived through every single age until now. Mm-hmm. I've done it before. I'm telling you, you might want to listen to me because I know how it turns out. Oh, no, you don't. Okay. I'll tell you, I told you so.
This was an interesting conversation.
And it went all over the place.
But it all seemed to be connected somehow.
It is, because we are all connected
through the simulation.
The creator in the simulation.